Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dillon. I'm your host. Man, Matt, it is a hot one. I'm just going to start with that. It is like 97 here. I am feel like I'm sweating like a whore in church. It's it's a rough one today, man.
Yeah, I wish I could say the same. It is colder here than it has been in the last couple of weeks. It's been raining nonstop for like 3 weeks now. It's like living in the Pacific Northwest all of a sudden here in Southeast Michigan. It's been absolutely terrible. It's flooding job sites. We had a baseball tournament over the weekend. Yesterday's game was raining the entire time. I mean, it was just brutal.
Man. And I mean, that like weather delays are normal, right? It's it happens. It's the expected, unexpected, if you will, in construction, the thing that we all have to deal with that nobody ever likes, but it's part of what happens.
It is, man, and it's a pain in the ass. You know, here especially, we expect it earlier in the season. You know, April, May, we expect it to be real wet, and we were dry as a bone. So I guess shame on us for not moving faster or being ready early, but we're getting spanked right now, that's for sure. Next week looks like it's going to calm down.
Well, and in that's one of the things, too, I want to touch on here is just across construction, the problems that everyone is having with, materials, with delays. And it's not just weather, but, delays of all sorts. Delays from, factories aren't opening, people are going on vacation, which that's to be expected to some point, some degree this time of year. But I think one thing that was pointed out with me is this pent-up demand from last year, right? Nobody could go anywhere, no one could do anything, and now things are finally open and kids are out of school, so parents and people that are on unemployment or whatever are taking full advantage if you want to say, of this whole situation. If things are open, they can go do stuff. They're still getting paid for not doing anything. And, it's unfortunate, but I think that's some of the other problems that are kind of exacerbating this whole construction issue and really, I mean, for a lot of things, but that was something I didn't take into account was vacations and that side of things.
It's really like the perfect storm right now, man. I mean, it's a little bit of everything and a lot of some things. And from the sales side, from, what I do, it is completely obliterated what I'm used to. I mean, I'm calling leads and talking with prospects now and having to tell them, we need to start planning now to get you a building in 2023, because there's no chance of it happening in 22 anymore. And people don't want to believe that. And so it kind of makes me the bad guy for a minute, but I'm just a messenger in this. I'm not putting the steel on boats. I'm just telling you what the truth is. But, I saw your post the other day. Was it the AGC now is pushing back and asking our current administration to put people back to work? That would be supremely helpful right about now.
Yeah. And it was, I don't know, necessarily shocking to me, but it's a big deal when the associations come out, and because it's the association of like general contractors. So when a contractors union association comes out and says something like that, it's a really definitive statement, on topics that are relevant. And again, to a lot of people, it's, and it's affecting the whole supply chain. It's from, manufacturers to shippers, transportation, logistics, warehousing, to skilled trades and people out in the field. It's not one thing. It's, like you said, a perfect storm of stuff. I don't know how else better to explain that, but just of, things happening in the industry.
Yeah. And, you don't often see groups like that take such a hard line stance on a polarizing topic, right? They're usually pretty vanilla when it comes to that sort of thing, unless it gets really bad enough of a situation that they're willing to kind of put their neck on the line. So I guess in a way it's good to see them do it. But it's definitely a sign of the times, kind of a little tangent here. So my wife has a lease, and it's coming up soon on an F-150. We're due up in November, I think. And I don't know how we got the deal we got when we leased this thing a couple years ago, but it's like the cheapest lease payment I've ever seen, like $225 a month for an F-150. So we started talking to our dealer guy, and he said, well, here's the deal. If we can even find you one, the cheapest your lease is going to be now is like $450. So what the hell? Why? Our credit's great. We didn't miss payments. The truck's coming in under mileage. And the same thing. It's every industry. So he said, there's inflation. There's this whole lack of microchip thing that's going on. I mean, Ford has in Dearborn has lots just full of F-150s just sitting, rotting from the rain because they can't drive them. So for an F-150 with a 10,500 mile a year lease, which is, bottom tier, it costs the same for me to lease that as it would for me to lease an Expedition.
Wow. Well, I mean, I know Ford for a while like shut down their plants. Even this year, just they couldn't get materials. Material costs went up, and that's across all the big three. They
all of them, yeah.
Paused everything. Like you can't get materials, or you have like core components, like all the microchips that go into all these vehicles, and you can't find them or get them, or no one's making them or whatever. You might as well just shut the assembly line down.
Yeah, I mean, it's all three of them right now. Well, all of them in Metro Detroit. Their lots are full of essentially dead vehicles.
Wow.
It's I can't even imagine how much money they're losing. So I mean, I understand trying to combat that with jacking up pricing on what you can sell, but when's it going to end? When is enough?
Well, I mean, that's the $1 trillion question, right? It's because it's not one thing. You want to point to, and I've tried to like figure out what's the crux of this whole thing. Is it people not working? Well, kind of, but then you look at like demand side, and building is going on like crazy. Then you look at supply side, and it's like, well, we blew through our inventory because we had to shut down last year. And when we typically have, 6 to 8 weeks of lag inventory, when we no longer have that, well, heck, that's a problem for everything, because now you have no buffer time in anything that you're doing. Heck, that's it's a big deal when you run out of all your inventory, you run out of all your buffer from all this stuff, and then you can't come back to work, or worse yet, you can't find replacement parts if something broke, and then even if you can make the stuff, you can't ship it because now like there's not enough truck drivers because of all the pent up demand for everything. So, or people are going on vacation, and, you don't have enough people in the workforce. So now it's just, you shut the line down. Like it's not one thing. As much as all of us would love to put one big headline out there, it's just so many things that are combining together that really put a hamper on everything. And there's some grace on all sides, but I think too, it's, when you go to dinner, you want good service, right? Like, don't be a dick of a customer, but also like, you want good service when you go out to eat and go places. So I think there's, from everybody, you give a little grace. Things might take a little longer, for a lot of this, or heck, buying a car or whatever it might be. But it's, at the end of the day, everybody needs to show up and give their best. And I think in a lot of industries, we're still just lacking that common piece of like, show up and do a good job.
Because so many of us, and I say us very lightly, are just not showing up. That's a shitty reality of what we're dealing with right now. And you could have all the supply in the world, but if you don't have the manpower to push it where it needs to go, it's just a pile of supplies. It's almost funny to me now, because this started with construction months and months ago. And I think we felt it. We saw it first because we plan so far out typically, and no one really, I don't know if they didn't believe it or they didn't care to notice it or what, but now it's everything. And at least now you're starting to hear people squawk a little bit. So hopefully that portion of this wicked equation gets fixed soon. I don't think that'll, overnight make everything go back to normal, but it'll certainly help and get us back in the right direction.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so many things of what we've addressed here before. Even if you wanted to turn on and push out, 10,000 tons of steel a month or a quarter or whatever they do, you can only, that plant's going to take 18 months to build. Even if you could find the parts to put it up today.
Right. So we just gotta, you just gotta hang on and hope that you don't fall off the boat while we're swirling around this whirlpool right now.
Yeah, and again, everybody remember that through all this, through all the things that we talk about, is and help again through all this that we need to understand that it's going to take a while, that it's going to be some changes that have to occur for everything to come through. But above and beyond, as we've covered here a lot before, it's communication. Communication first, foremost, above everything, because nothing screws a project over more than people just not communicating. And it's a shame up and down the industry on, some of this that's happening because of poor communication, or people getting, outrageously upset for somebody just not telling them the truth.
Yeah. I mean, the truth hurts. It's ugly sometimes, but when you're talking about lots and lots of money on the line and people's livelihoods, you got to just rip the Band-Aid off. You got to learn to communicate. You got to be able to be honest, and regardless of whether it's comfortable or not.
Yeah,
that's the show. We're done.
We could end it right there. But the other big thing that we wanted to cover here today and talk about, because we feel that this also doesn't get enough credit, or there might be, I won't say confusion, but I think there's miscommunication across a lot of this, and or nobody ever sets expectations up front, which I guess is like miscommunication for this particular piece of projects, and who's responsible, how we feel about it. Obviously, you got to work it out amongst yourself, but is the great wide world of submittal review.
It's almost like a 4-letter word to me, because I hate them. I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from the design side and kind of give an overview of how this should be, and I'll just try not to swear too much.
So obviously, if you're in construction, you understand the whole submittal process, or let's at least hope. But for those of you that might not be familiar with it, I want to give an overview here. So bear with me for those of you that know what the hell I'm talking about. So submittals are really intended to submit basically what is going to be installed on a project. So as a designer, and this goes up and down the chain, architect, like everybody has their specifications of what they want installed. Some of it's done on the drawing, some of it's done through the spec book. And through that, so electrically, it'd be light fixtures and gear, mechanical would be mechanical units and duct and diffusers and all that kind of stuff. Basically everything on the project can have a submittal associated with it. The design team and the construction team decide which submittals are going to get submitted and reviewed, and then they go from there. In this, and submittals can be, I don't even know what to look for in a steel submittal, but those are, can be very intense and long because they have all the calculations associated with steel submittals. But you go from anywhere from doors, door hardware, the specification sheet for each and every door, each and every knob. I mean, everything on a project basically has a data sheet provided to the design team. So the subcontractors ultimately submit a specification sheet, what they're planning on ordering, planning on using for the project. And then the design team would review that to verify that it met specification for the project on what they spec'd, what was included, and yes or no. And if no, what do they need to provide for it? Some of this is also for O&Ms, kind of to do it all at once and do it up front, so you don't have a big delay on O&Ms at the backside. So that's part of this too. And O&Ms is operation and maintenance manuals for the, again, end of project submittals. And here's your flash drive, used to be binder of stuff to anything breaks, it's here. Good luck to go and find it. But the basis of it is that you submit what you're going to install, and the design team says yes or no, and then basically to come to accepted submittal of this is the thing that we're going to install on the project.
So that is how it's supposed to work. And it should be really pretty cut and dry. So the design consultants, whatever, whoever they may be, architect, engineers, like you said, they specify a type of product, and they typically give a couple different options of brand name, sometimes of style. So they give a little bit of leeway to the people bidding and ultimately building a project. So as a general contractor, I have a generally hard time with this whole process, because I feel like it's a waste of time for a lot of people. So I go and I hire my subs. My subs then have to get me their submittals. The submittals come through my office, and then I have to touch them and filter them and file them. And then I send them off to whomever's reviewing them, the architect or the engineer. Then they send them off to whomever's reviewing them. And it's this big convoluted chain of events that has to happen before it comes back to my office, then back to my sub, and we can finally order. In a perfect world, this would just be real quick. There are definitely platforms now that are helping to make these electronic, make them more streamlined, but those are also pretty pricey platforms that not a lot of folks are using. So it creates this giant bottleneck in the project. And it's at a time in the project when so much is going on, right? It's typically, it's right when you start. You've got contracts signed, you're writing subcontracts, you're buying out a project. You got, all these numbers flying around. You have a pulse on budget and schedule. And then there's this one little sticking point where you have to do this administrative stuff. And don't get me wrong, we have to make sure that we're installing the right stuff, the right materials, because the design consultants put a lot of time into designing it, and they have reasons and rationale for what they chose. But it never seems to work as smoothly as it should. And I don't think it's just me. I've seen this in numerous different companies. I've seen it with numerous different design consultants and subs. It's a giant bottleneck.
So my take on this is very similar to yours, Matt, in that really through this process, we've got, ultimately I need to be talking, as electrical engineer record, I need to be talking to the electrical contractor, right? That's who I'm, going to go back and forth with on, hey, I need this, or this is the thing that I'm looking for out of, your gear submittal. It didn't have whatever, it didn't have this piece in there, or your fire alarm submittal didn't have battery calcs or whatever to the electrical contractor. And then they go back to their suppliers and get, all that stuff to assemble and send back. And far often, because we want things to move at a pace to where things can get ordered, everybody can finalize their stuff, and especially on things that, it's a 12-week lead time or 16-week lead time under normal conditions to build electrical gear, and big switch gear, it's a 16-week lead time. I have no idea what it is today, but under normal circumstances, it's 12 to 16 weeks, depending on what you're getting, is a standard lead time, because it's all custom built, made to order stuff. So, okay, that's fair. But hey, we need to order this now so we can have it and set it and all that kind of stuff. when concrete's in and floors are done. So through that process, like I won't say every day, but every week, especially, that goes by, and anything that gets held up, or if you have to resubmit, re-review, this could be a 2-3 week process to just hand it off. And you start to look at how many hands it touches. So if you've got the electrical contractor, they've got maybe their admin person that it goes through to make sure that everything's buttoned up or whatever, to the general contractor, to the field engineer. So now it's 3 people, right? The, project manager on the contractor side, their admin person, now the project engineer, probably an admin person on the GC side, to then go over and then go to our admin person for the engineer, and then me, or if we have to move it around for whoever might be doing it, or like, hey, I can't get to this, someone else can review submittals. So you're at like 8 people now, and then you got to go back through the entire chain of people to get it, reviewed, and then it sits in an inbox for a day times 8. That's 8 days to get things reviewed. So when we really look at submittals, because ultimately how I see them, and again, I could be wrong here, so internet, correct us here, but is ultimately it's the design team's responsibility to make sure that what is submitted for submittal review is what was specified, or meets specification, meets code, meets design criteria. And then it's the general contractor, their responsibility to make sure that what is on that submittal like actually gets installed. And also with the design team, and that's why you do punches and above ceiling and rough in punches, is to also do that. But again, as a design engineer, like, we're not on site every day. We can't catch everything. And that's really how I see like that process. But often things get held up for, again, just people miss it. It's in an inbox somewhere. And, unfortunately that happens.
Yeah. And it's not a good excuse, but I mean, I get 200 emails a day on average. And now there's something to be said for, maybe I shouldn't be the guy running submittal processes at my company. But again, we're small enough that we all do a lot of things. So it's fraught with problems and opportunities for delay. And as we preach about, delay and time costs money. And it seems like there could be a way to streamline this that's not so cumbersome, that doesn't involve buying Procore. Okay, I said it, but there's got to be a way to streamline this process, and so far I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and it's really because my question ends up being, in this process, and not to say that I haven't seen some good like field engineer, project engineer on the GC side to keep stuff off of my plate or whatever, from coming to me that maybe shouldn't, right? Like, hey, this wasn't a full submittal, but rarely, I mean, usually it's just a forward, they stamp that they got it, and that's about it. I struggle to see where the value add is in it going through the GC, other than that's the way that it's typically gone.
I am 100% with you, man. And there are some design consultants that are great to work with. There are some that live by this old school mentality where the GC has to go and review it first. We have to stamp it and approve it. And aside from just adding monotonous redundancy to the project, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Me or one of my employees, we shouldn't be reviewing switchgear requirements. We don't know what it is. We don't ask the engineers to price and schedule a project, because it's just not the wheelhouse, right? So why can't we just have subcontractors directly interface with our design consultants? And I mean, I'll keep a pulse on it from afar maybe, but I don't feel like we need to be involved in it. Because let's be real, my review, or my team's review of most submittals is hot garbage. It is.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is admitting it. And I don't know, like historically, if it was to protect, insulate, whatever the subs from the design consultants, right? The GC was that interface historically. And I don't know, right? It was to protect a relationship, but I like struggle to see even where that ego could come in. It's like everybody's got their role to play within this process. And, for you getting in the middle of, an architect or an engineer talking to a sub when none of us are contractually obligated to each other, unless it's in a design build context, now like we're just talking to somebody that's on the project team, but everybody's contracted to the owner. So like we don't typically like hold contracts with each other or with the firms. And again, majority of projects out there, not to say that this isn't done, but even then it's like, okay, well, we're all in the same contract now if you're doing design build. So can I talk to the people that we're all contractually obligated to? Like from that standpoint, or just like as a good person, let alone everything else. It's always kind of confused me. And it's just like, this is the way we've done it. And I've never gotten a better explanation.
Well, I think you just nailed it. You just completely hit the nail on the head. And it's old school design and architecture and construction, right? Where we were all in separate contracts, and there's projects I'm involved in now where we're on separate contracts. So you've got a guy over here who contractually means nothing to me, right? Who's trying to tell me and my staff how we have to do things, but yet they have no justification for doing so. And then you have all these gruff, grizzly construction folks who are saying, well, no, screw you. You don't get to tell me that. And it's adversarial. It's finger pointing, and all it does in the end of the day, in my mind, is lead to cost and schedule overruns that could easily be avoided. When we do design build, the way we like to do it, the way we preach about it, we're all at the table. And frankly, when we do it that way, our submittal process is almost down to nothing, because we all are at that same table. We all kind of grow up in the project together. We know what has to go where. We don't typically produce specification books. That's a whole nother episode we'll get to some other time that I could. They're nothing good but for starting fires, if you want my point. But there's ways to collaborate and to join up and work as a team that you don't get that finger pointing. You just cooperate, and it creates a better project for everybody involved, I think.
I was talking to a developer friend of ours this morning, and in that conversation, because he's new to the game, right? He's new into developing, and they're doing a mixed use project, and in there, because he's been in construction, doing some things here and there, but this is kind of his first foray into commercial, and then also being an owner, right? So it's figuring out how things are designed, how things are built. And he was kind of asking, about responsibilities on the project. I was like, you're the owner, man. Like it is your responsibility. If you want meetings, you tell everybody, show up. Like it's that simple. At the end of the day, it's your project. You're the owner. It is your responsibility. And I was like, a lot of the things I'm telling you about doing, right, and like bringing everybody to the table, having your subs in early, bringing your design consultants in, having like setting expectations on what are we going to get done in the next week between like design meetings. No one ever does this, but if they did, projects would run a heck of a lot smoother, because it's, he's like, we're setting, weekly meetings. I'm like, man, that's all well and good. But I've been to many a design meeting, and it's like, okay, I showed up. Now I don't have to think about this project until next week because I have 5 others to deal with when I get back to the office. We don't really have a milestone due anytime soon. I'm showing up, but, like, am I working on it? I'm not going to tell you no, but it's, a lot of that goes on where we were just like honest and upfront, which is hard to do, but to say, hey, like, I'm not going to work on this week, or like, until these things get done, there's nothing for us to do. Right. We'll be more than happy to show up, to be at these meetings, to be a part of any conversations, but like, we need this, and this to happen before we can do any more work on it. So, but again, that would be an honest conversation.
You just have to set clear and concise expectations for everybody. And I know the guy you're referring to, and it's cool to see him going through this, and to talk with him, because I remember when I was kind of just getting my feet wet in it. But it's an industry that is so full of stress and headache but it doesn't have to be. And we talk about this all the time. There's a level of cooperation that just has to be fostered. And once you get to that point and you have everyone working on the same team, rowing in the same direction, it can be really quite enjoyable. But you have to manage the process. You have to manage expectations, and somebody's got to be the asshole boss, because somebody has to make decisions and tell everybody in the boat which direction you're going to start rowing.
So as you were talking, it finally dawned on me, and like, I could just feel a sense of calm come over me. And the problem with construction more than anything is the posturing. It's the whole, what is somebody else going to think? What do other people think of me? What are they going to feel if I say what's actually going on? And all that posturing creates so much stress and tension, because you're doing things on how people are going to react to you, not on what the truth is. And it's like ingrained in this industry on like what people think or might say or might do, versus saying and doing what you know to be right, and then dealing with the other side of it. And I mean, I think that's the real core of the problem.
I'm going to step back and say, I don't think that's just in construction. I think that's the core of the problem in society in general, is people accept being mediocre, and they don't want to be the outliers because they're afraid of what people might think of them. If we all just rip that Band-Aid off. I can't say that stupid phrase enough. My office hates it because I use it constantly. But they know when I walk into a meeting and say, okay, it's time to rip the damn Band-Aids off, but shit's going to happen at that meeting. And we don't all have to be friendly and joking all the time. We can get down to business and have hard, tough conversations, but we all come out the other side of it way better because of it. And it's like that everywhere, from the construction war room to the damn grocery store. If stuff isn't working, you just got to handle it. And the longer we sit around and wait, and there's a term that keeps slipping up in my mouth and I'm not going to use it, but the more we do that, the longer these problems fester, and it's a waste of time. It breeds mediocrity, and we all need to just stop it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can think of specific examples on projects where like we pulled work off drawings, like hid stuff on the drawings to make it seem like we weren't as, like we weren't in CDs, right? We're still in DDs because we pulled this stuff off. And it's like, I'm speechless, like, why? What, like, don't you want to show that you did more, or only because you want to show more progress later? Or I don't get it, man. I don't understand it.
There's a lot of it, and it's on all sides of the table. It's no different than the project manager hedging his bets and hiding all of the savings he's worked into a project. They hide it until the very, very end. So, they have this safety blanket because they don't want to admit that they have this extra money squirreled away. And it's the same thing though. If you would just just be honest and admit where you're at. Then the people who are charged with planning where this boat is supposed to be headed can actually have a better data to go by and to plan with. When you hold it to the very end and surprise, we're done with the drawings, or surprise, we found $100,000 in savings. Well, great. Now we just got smacked with a tax bill that we could have avoided.
Or done some other creative design thing that we were looking to, if we had money, we would have done, or whatever, right? Or an art installation or whatever. Yeah, it's games that just don't need to be played. And I think that's really like the point of today's show is there's a lot of games that don't need to be played. And frankly, most of the people that are playing them are bad at the game. So where you're not positioning for a power move, even though you think it is, at the end of the day, like it wasn't the right thing. Like on that savings, right? It's like you're going to get in more trouble, quote unquote, or like people are going to be more upset with you than in showing them the savings because they wanted to spend it versus not, or like this whole thing in like, what do we put on drawings versus just doing the work? It's kind of just crazy to me in a lot of the games that, and people really don't understand the game they're playing, frankly.
That's a great way to put it. We just need to quit playing these damn games, and everybody needs to get back to work.
Guys, I know today was a little bit of an episode on public events, on current events, on things in the news, but this is something that we feel very strongly on in getting back to work, doing a good job, and being clear, concise, trying to not waste time, trying to be as smooth as possible, and frankly, to point out contract pieces that I think most people just frankly aren't aware of. It's not to anyone's fault necessarily, but it's something that, you know, we really want to get out there, really want to help people to understand, to know, to see that, look, there's being honest goes a long way, especially in construction. When you do so much on a handshake, on a, you know, nod on your word, that trust really goes a long way. And I think, you know, taking that for granted is going to be to your detriment more than anything else.
Couldn't have said it better, my friend. This has been one of those episodes where I think if we keep going, I'm just going to start screaming. So probably best we sign out till next time.
All right, guys, that's this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. As always, go ahead and make sure to share the show with somebody that you feel needs to learn more about the industry, to be more knowledgeable, to be more aware of the things that are going on, and really just, again, how we see the industry. You know, Matt and I are working on some books and some other content to get out to you that you can share with friends, family, all that kind of good stuff. So we'll be sharing more as we progress here. But again, guys, thank you so much for listening to us on a weekly basis. And we'll be sure to provide you with more great content info as we move forward.
Good stuff. We'll see you guys.